The Cheesecake Factory. Clearly endearing to many, but not much of a factory. And while looking like all of the casinos ever built, it definitely isn't. Gambling might even be prohibited. But while you can't pay for your cheesecake with chips, you can swirl a martini around dressed in a tuxedo. It's that sort of place. Well, kind of. The Cheesecake Factory likes to think so. They have a tuxedo cheesecake to go with an actual tuxedo to make one feel at ease. If you're looking for somewhere that caters for you and all of your friends, no matter what they're into, the Cheesecake Factory isn't really a gamble, and regular clothes are fine. The good old basement, the perfect habitat for half-used paint cans, old bicycles, £400 internet trolls, and tinkering with your cheesecake recipe, the latter being more apt in the case of Evelyn Overton. Having seen a recipe for cheesecake in her local Detroit newspaper in the 1940s, Evelyn began to perfect her recipe. Cheesecake recipes are fairly straightforward, but there is still a method that needs working on. There was increasing demand for Evelyn's cheesecake, so much so that she started her own bakery. However, having 2 children and running a bakery was apparently incompatible at the time, and so the bakery ceased, or rather put on ice, because Evelyn then moved her baking equipment into the basement of the family home and continued selling cakes to many of the restaurants in town. The town would change. Pastures knew. Deciding on a change, Evelyn and her husband Oscar packed up and moved to Southern California in 1972. The people of Southern California really like cheesecake. This is because people tend to really like cheesecake, and Southern California has people. The couple's son David was all grown up, and with a look that was all the rage in 1975 when David joined his parents' business after seeing they needed some help. Up until this point, David Overton had been a musician, a drummer to be more precise, but leaving this all behind, he set out to help expand the cheesecake business. An obvious pun would be that he came to drum up some more business, but that sounds lame, and I wouldn't put you through that. David Overton was a symbol of things to come. In 1978, he knew that opening up a physical location was the way to go, so the Cheesecake Factory opened his first restaurant in Beverly Hills. There was a line on the opening day. Being able to see all the different cheesecakes on display behind a sheet of glass seemingly shifted people's attitude, a sort of dessert Overton window. The whole formula would expand both in locations and menu, to the point of the Cheesecake Factory going public in 1992. The company has grown into a multi-billion-dollar one, and along the way looked to carve out its own niche. A niche like looking to serve every menu item ever invented. This is a fairly unique approach in the restaurant industry, and for good reason. It's usually a sign that a restaurant is a jack of all trades and master of none. I know some critics might be nodding their head and thinking that is exactly what the Cheesecake Factory is. The only problem with that is you're just nodding your head at a computer. But from a business point of view, rather than the artistry, if you can pull it off, there are many benefits. Obviously, there is the mass appeal, something for everybody, pretty much, which I understand is part of the reason for the large menu. In the early days of adding dishes, whatever was popular at the time in other restaurants etc. would be added. An eclectic mix, the subsequent result. Mix this with a kind of old worldy, European-y, Egyptian-y interior decoration that has just enough confusion that you're likely to give up thinking altogether and just pick up your knife and fork or chopstick in preparation for playing eeny meeny miny mo with the menu choice. All this makes the Cheesecake Factory a place that some people look up to, some look down to, and others are just content, knowing there's probably plenty to like on the menu. This amalgamation has been referred to by the Cheesecake Factory and David Overton as upscale casual dining, while market segmentation is very much a reality. On hearing this, I was a little bit skeptical. There's already casual dining. Does it really need another subsector, or is this just a dig at the competition? However, thinking about it a little bit more, there is some validity, albeit small, to the whole upscale casual dining thing. When it comes to the Cheesecake Factory, where's the competition? You have the bar and grill chains, Applebee's, Chili's, TGI Fridays, etc., and also the steakhouse chains. While subjective, the Cheesecake Factory is probably at the very least near the top for upscaleness, while also casual, so it's not that bold of a claim. Still a place for an occasion, but with value in the form of variety and portion size. What doesn't help is the cutthroat landscape of restaurant competition, is when your local eatery has to close its doors due to not being able to pay the rent. Sometimes decades of hard work and reputation ruined ruined in short order. But if you're the Cheesecake Factory, there are ways around this. You see, large chains have an advantage here. They can employ some of the finest minds in the business and implement complex accounting structures, advanced strategies, and equations. The result, and this might sound complicated, so brace yourself, the company told its landlords it's not paying the rent. What? Yeah, you know, the whole paying rent malarkey, so we stay in business. Yeah, not doing it. So it turns out not paying the rent means you have more money. You can remain open. Weather the storm. If only small independents had thought about that. The old too big to fail factor comes into play. With a lot of mall locations and being a large brand that can draw consumers to a location, there is more of an obvious business incentive for large landlords. Unfair, perhaps, but an unfortunate reality. Of course, this was a temporary measure. The Cheesecake Factory had the time to restructure, often a necessity in a downturn, and furloughing 41,000 staff members or 90% of the restaurant workers with no pay helps with the process. Top executives also felt the pain. They had to survive on a salary cut of 20%. But it's not all doom and gloom. The restaurant workers, now out of a job, were able to receive a daily complimentary meal from the restaurant. I'm assuming they had to serve themselves. How this will affect the Cheesecake Factory's ranking as a positive place to work by industry standards will likely come to light in future polls. Up until this point, it has not been bad. According to the Cheesecake Factory, the company has been named in the 100 best companies to work for 8 years in a row, which I checked, and it's true. The only restaurant company to do so, if you go by the Forbes Top 100. So how can the Cheesecake Factory menu be so big? It's clearly part of the winning formula. Value from portion sizes. As mentioned before, having a big menu is far from the norm in the restaurant industry. So what is the Cheesecake Factory doing that others are not? Or are they? You see, the menu at the Cheesecake Factory is fairly big, but not as varied as you might think. If you take the pasta dishes, for example, there is a lot of cross-pollination of ingredients. There are 3 fettuccine alfredo dishes, 1 regular, 1 chicken, and 1 with shrimp. Switching out chicken and shrimp makes for a recurring combination pattern. Steak dishes are often 1 ingredient different, and the cheesecakes build on a standard base also. The Cheesecake Factory maintain a smaller ingredient list with a creative, name anyway, menu list that has subtle differences without being radically different. To give the Cheesecake Factory credit, if I'm not mistaken, and do correct me in the comments section if you've worked at the Cheesecake Factory, but I believe most of what is produced is prepared in-house. By that I mean, with the exception of time resource heavy products like bread and cheesecake, food is prepared in the restaurants by chefs, with food preparation and cooking to order rather than simply warming up pre-made meals that have been prepared off-site in a centralized kitchen somewhere. So if it's as simple as simply adding 1 ingredient and you have a whole new menu item, then why don't more companies do this? The short answer is, they do. It's just the Cheesecake Factory really goes for it. There's little difference to how any fast food model operates. Adding bacon to a burger, salami to a sandwich, or a different chocolate to a soft-serve ice cream, where most have 4 or 5 combinations, the Cheesecake Factory goes all in and has 30 plus varieties of cheesecake alone. There is, however, a looming issue for the Cheesecake Factory menu and the brand itself: inflation, or is that shrinkflation? However it materializes, the restaurant chain is seen by many as having big portions and a big menu. It's part of the deal, and the Cheesecake Factory is not immune from it. Some might say that it has already started, some might not. Right now, Cheesecake Factory seems to have bounced back somewhat. The sector still has many challenges ahead. It would be easy just to sneak a shrimp off the plate, or cut an extra piece into a cheesecake. The alternative would be to raise the prices while nobody is looking, but people notice. And this is where the upscale bit can come back to bite the company. If prices rise or value diminishes, it's an easy move down from upscale casual to, well, casual. It's really easy. If gambling or tuxedos aren't really your thing, there's always the Cheesecake Factory to go. Or, if you're in a basement somewhere honing your craft in the comment section, there's always delivery. That's the way things are nowadays. The Overton window has shifted. All things the Cheesecake Factory. Let me know. Thanks for watching.